Hello, everyone. Welcome to San Francisco Ballet's Points of View lecture series. I'm Jasmine Yepwin. I'm the Associate Director of Education at San Francisco Ballet. On behalf of everyone at SF Ballet, thank you for joining us for the 5th Points of View lecture of the 2022 season. We are thrilled to have performances in front of live audiences again in the Opera House. So thank you to all of our audiences, both in person and online, for supporting SF Ballet throughout the pandemic. Tonight is opening night of Program 6, which features Helgi Thomassen's Prism, the world premiere of Christopher Wheeldon's Finale, and the world premiere of Dwight Rhoden's The Promised Land. Today's POV will focus on The Promised Land and the incredible artist, visionary, and choreographer Dwight Rhoden. This conversation has been pre-recorded in order to accommodate our guests' schedules for opening night of The Promised Land. This season, we are pleased to provide this free Points of View lecture series online. Before the pandemic, Points of View lectures were held in the War Memorial Opera House before every Wednesday performance. This year, we are continuing that tradition and will offer a new Points of View lecture online at 6 p.m. Pacific time before each Wednesday performance. The recording of today's Points of View lecture will continue to be available free online on SF Ballet's YouTube channel through the end of the 2022 season. You can find the full list of POV lectures, whether they are streamed live or pre-recorded, on our website at sfballet.org/events. Today's Points of View will be a conversation with Dwight Rhoden, Artistic Director and Resident Choreographer of Complexions Contemporary Ballet, and CalArts Professor, Dr. Ariel Osterweis. The Promised Land is Rhoden's meditation on the upheaval over the past few years, with a focus squarely on resiliency. Just as the past few years have ricocheted from extreme change and sudden stillness, there's a range of textures within Rhoden's piece, from fast and chaotic to pensive and serene. I'm so excited to dive into this work and to hear more from the choreographer about how the piece came together, and then to see it on the Opera House stage. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Dr. Osterweis. Ariel Osterweis has a Ph.D. in Performance Studies from UC Berkeley and is on faculty at CalArts, where she teaches Performance Studies and Critical Dance Studies. She has 3 book projects underway: Body Impossible, Desmond Richardson, and the Politics of Virtuosity for Oxford University Press, Oxford Studies in Dance Theory series forthcoming; Prophylactic Aesthetics, Latex, Spandex, and Sexual Anxieties Performed for University of Michigan Press for University of Michigan Press Theater Theory Text Performance Series; and Disavowing Virtuosity, Performing Aspiration, Dance and Performance Interviews. As a dancer and performer, Osterweis has worked professionally with Complexions Contemporary Ballet, Mia Michaels-Raw, Heidi Latsky, and Julie Tolentino. She was also a dramaturg for John Jaspers and Narcissister. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Ari back to San Francisco Ballet, even though it's on Zoom, for this POV lecture, and welcome Dwight as well. We're so excited that you're taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us for this conversation. Welcome, Ari. Welcome, Dwight.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. It is a pure delight to be here on Zoom with San Francisco Ballet and with Dwight Rhoden. I will tell you a bit about my history with the two very soon, but first I would like to share Dwight's bio. Founding artistic director and resident choreographer of Complexions Contemporary Ballet, Dwight Rhoden performed with Dayton Contemporary Dance Company, Le Ballet Jazz de Montreal, and as a principal dancer with Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. He has choreographed for New York City Ballet, Aspen Santa Fe Ballet, Ballet Met, Colorado Ballet, Dance Theater of Harlem, the Joffrey Ballet, Miami City Ballet, Pennsylvania Ballet, Philadelphia, the Washington Ballet, Ballet Nice Mediterranean, and Rome Opera Ballet, among others. Rhoden has directed and choreographed for television, film, and theater, including So You Think You Can Dance, Cirque du Soleil, world tours for Prince and Lenny Kravitz, and the film One Last Dance. Honors include a New York Foundation for the Arts Award, a Benoit de la Danse Award nomination for The Great Gatsby with the Mariinsky Ballet, induction into NYFA Hall of Fame, the Chusan Go Award for Choreography, and an honorary doctorate from Boston Conservatory. Let's Begin at the End was his first work for SF Ballet. It's my great joy to be here with you, Dwight.
Hi, Ariel.
Hi. So maybe I'll say a little bit about how we know each other, and then we can launch into our interview.
Sounds good.
So I must admit, I trained at San Francisco Ballet from the age of 4.5 until 16. And then I really got the modern dance bug and moved to New York and did the A-Leaf Scholarship Program, where I met Dwight and Desmond Richardson, who, I mean, we saw each other dance when you were in the company at A-Leaf and I was a student. And then I had the great privilege of getting to dance with Complexions in the early years, around 1995 to 7. And I've also interviewed you in research contexts for my work on complexions, virtuosity, Black dance, masculinities, especially queer masculinities, and of course for the book project on Desmond. And so I would love to start with, if you wouldn't mind sharing your early dance background, because I think that's going to come into our discussion of the piece in question.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great to be with you because we have such a connection over the years. Well, I mean, I started dancing, and I know you know this, Ariel. I started dancing very, very late. I was 18. I was a senior in high school. And I basically was just a social dancer. I was a person who loved to dance. And I also would get into dance contests, you know, from time to time. Back then, schools had dances at the end of the week. Like on Fridays, we had like a school dance, and I would compete in the competitions. And there was a young lady, her name is Sherry Williams, who was with Dayton Contemporary Dance Company, who said to me that, you know, you have some talent. You know, she saw me doing another sort of local dance thing that I did. And she said, you should come over and see what a real dancer does in a day, you know, daily, and how there's a training. And so she invited me over. I went in and, you know, honestly, never really looked back. I kind of like found my passion because I had no idea that this form existed in the way that it does, with you know, a structure, and there was training involved, because I just danced because I love to move. And so that was my beginning. And because they were looking for boys, they almost immediately put me into their second company with no training. I mean, I was coordinated, you know, and I had a good body for dance, but again, I needed to like put all the pieces together. And that was my beginning. And then, you know, within a year, not because I was good enough, but again, because they needed men, I ended up into the first company, and I just really worked really, really hard, fell in love, and never looked back, to be honest.
Amazing. And my understanding of those early years is that you did hand dancing, the hustle, a lot of those partner dances. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then when you got to Dayton, of course, I'm sure you had to do contemporary styles as well as ballet.
Oh yeah, it was Horton and Graham, and we did some Limon and ballet for sure. But because I saw right away that I needed to get a foundation, I would take class everywhere. Like I would take ballet classes after our days of rehearsal over at the Dayton Ballet, or wherever I could find a ballet class in Dayton, Ohio, because I'm from Dayton, but I didn't know anything about the world of dance there. But I knew I needed that training. So I used to just supplement every way I could. Yeah.
That's great. And in terms of your journey, because now, you know, Complexions having emerged in the mid-90s, and now you choreograph for both contemporary companies and ballet companies. A lot of people don't know that Complexions started as a very eclectic mix of, some of us were barefoot and never put on point shoes. Others wore point shoes. Sometimes there were ballet slippers and socks. And so I've always been really interested in the evolution of your aesthetic, from something that was quite radical, especially as a departure from the Ailey company, into an aesthetic that still holds on to some of that radicality of form, but really now has come to define contemporary ballet. And so I wonder if you could say something about that aesthetic arc for you.
Well, I have to say, like, so when I started out, what I loved about what Desmond and I were doing was the fact that there were all of these different people in the room with different training, different background. And we found it so beautiful that everybody was different and so inspiring. And I know you remember, Ariel, in the early days, there were people who were very classical. There were people who were very modern. There were people who were really great at improvising and just moving. And that was the beginning, you know, that was like how we became inspired. And I think over the years, I've had this great love for ballet always. Also because probably I wanted it, and being 18 years old to start, I was like, wow, I am so behind. I need to catch up. And it was a form that I could, you know, put my head around and understand, and it physically made sense to me. But I was a contemporary dancer, you know, I was a modern dancer. I was a dancer who moved. But I love the organization that happened in the body with ballet. You know, and a lot of time, and I also love the point shoe. I have to say, when I was at Le Ballet Jazz de Montreal, we had point works. So there was a couple different point works, and that's where I really sort of fell in love with the idea of what the point shoe does. And the partnering. I had to partner girls on point, and I was like, whoa, that blew my mind. That's a whole that's a whole different experience, you know.
The whole technique
of it all. So that kind of made it so that I think it really opened my mind up to what the possibilities were. And I was like a kid in a candy store, and I always had my friends in whatever company I was in. I think they would run the other way when they saw me coming, because I was always saying, can you please work with me on the side while I create, while I will experiment? Like, you know, I would always get studio space and make new phrases. And so, yeah, I mean, I still to this day get the best part of what I do to me is like the exploration of the time in the studio. And I guess to answer your question, it kind of evolved over time according to the people that I worked with. And Desmond and I kind of brought our vision for what we think dance should be. And again, it's the Complexions idea, which is amalgamation. It's like melding things together. It's fusion. And that's why Complexions has evolved to what it is today, because we kind of wanted to have that strong ballet foundation, but we wanted to, you know, really disrupt the form in a way. Like, I mean, some people think of the word disruption as something violent, but I don't know, you just break it out and look at it in a new way.
Exactly. I love that. And some of the early dancers came from Ballet Frankfurt, Dance Theater of Harlem, Joffrey, Alvin Ailey, among others. And I think now something that's changed in dance is a lot of classical ballet dancers are being trained in some of those other forms like jazz, hip hop, contemporary, you know, even voguing. And so it's less now that you need to bring people from all these other companies. And I think the training has changed along with your aesthetic in many ways.
Yeah, and you know, we also have a technique that we are really, we're in the midst of codifying now called Nik. And honestly, it was Desmond and I, the way we used to warm up before shows when we were in the Ailey company, we would do a bar and I would add an upper body, you know, and I would turn the legs in and out at the bar. So we've, over the years, really brought that technique together, and we're in the midst of actually codifying it now. And it is something that is really needed in the ballet world. I think, you know, crazy choreographers like me show up to these classical companies, and there's 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 that a little bit of like getting used to being able to move your body that way. But I do have to say dancers today are a lot more versatile than they were even during the time that I was on stage, because they are actually able to handle things like Christopher Wilden, Justin Peck, myself, Kyle Abraham, like all of these different people are coming into the mix now, and dancers can handle it. They're more agile, they're more ready. It's exciting, actually, very exciting.
Yeah, and anatomically aware.
Yeah.
Like back in the day. It's really exciting what you're saying about process, because as I watched the rehearsal videos of the piece that you're premiering tonight, I noticed something really beautiful. At first, in the earlier rehearsals, the dancers were just, getting the steps together, still looking incredible, amazing. But as the rehearsal dates on the videos got later and later, you saw the dancers begin to embody your style so fully. And it was very moving for me, because it was almost, along with that is a carrying of a sense of the Black diaspora, Black vernacular movements that are infused into your movements, and just sort of a je ne sais quoi about the style that you can only really get if you're working live in the studio for hours and hours in style. And there is that fine balance between, being careful and technically sort of, on your leg, and then that kind of fluidity and the ability to move into different areas of the body and sort of the stylistic influences. So I wonder if you can say a little bit, actually maybe a lot, about how the seed for this piece came about, and then how you essentially worked the dancers in the studio. How did that embodiment come about, and how did you know when it was, there?
Well, I mean, first of all, I can't say enough about the San Francisco Ballet dancers. They have always been ready and available for wherever I wanted to go. I didn't feel limited in any way. This is even from the very first ballet, when I first came here for my first ballet, Let's Begin at the End, and now for the Promised Land. I knew them because I had already done a piece with them. I also did a film with a few dancers during the pandemic. So I had some experiences. So when I walked in the room, I felt free to be, free to be me, to do what I needed to do, to explore. And they're always with me, even on a day where things aren't going well, or we can't quite get something, or we're struggling with some material or whatever. They're 100% with you. They're very much a choreographer's sort of dream sort of group of dancers. First of all, their skill level and their openness. Thankfully, they're so open to doing whatever. And they're hungry. They're hungry and curious, So when I came into the room for the Promised Land, I really did not want to talk about the issues themselves that we were dealing with in the world. But I couldn't get beyond what we had gone through for the past 2 years. So the piece itself was about resiliency, perseverance, the strength of the human spirit. And what I wanted to really access was, I wanted them to participate in figuring out, what is it that we have? How do we get up every day and face the world another day? How is it that, we're dealing with a pandemic? No one's ever gone through this in this generation, the people that are here now, or in my generation, and certainly in the dancers' generation. Everything with racial equity that was going on, all the protests, the world was almost seemingly imploding upon itself. It was a crazy time. It still is. We're still recovering. And I wanted to talk about feelings, emotions, what you do every day to face the world through the hardest of times. And that's abstract, but it has real, real legs on it. There's and that's where I began, with the movement.
That's beautiful, because also dancers have no choice but to start anew every single day. You don't know if you're going to wake up with a torn hamstring or a sore ankle, and you've got to get yourself ready, you know, for the first tendu, the first undulation. And so in a sense, what people have had to do is an exaggeration of what dancers are already doing, in a sense.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah. And I'd imagine the dancers just felt so enlivened to be back in the studio rehearsing, and really getting to indulge in the work.
I think they did. And, you know, like, as you saw them sort of get looser along, like you said, as the rehearsal dates on the video changed, I also felt like there wasn't resistance, but I also felt like there was a reserve. Like, some people didn't initially maybe want to reveal their feelings about where they were, because maybe it was too difficult, or maybe they weren't ready. And my job in the studio was to try to create a space where they were able to let go. And as I said in one interview I did, I said they had to be like, the piece had to become what it was. It's almost like they were almost direct. I walked in with my concept, but they were almost directing the path we would take to get where we were going.
And was that more of a kinesthetic direction? They did it through their bodies, or did you talk through certain ideas and phrases along?
We talked through certain ideas, but I really, you know, a lot of times I'm always encouraged, like Desmond, my creative partner, is always like, Dwight, tell them everything we've been talking about before. I say, I don't like to tell them everything, because I like to give them the basis of what we're doing, but I want them to, I want to make sure that the movement, because we speak with our bodies as dancers, right? So I wanted the movement to say all it needed to say, because I wanted to, you know, I always want to do a good job, but I sometimes have to get out of the way and allow things to happen, and be okay with not knowing what the answer is at all times. And that's a hard space to be in when you're a director, you know, or a choreographer, and you've got 30 people looking at you, you know.
But that's what I love about your process. You were saying that San Francisco ballet dancers are like a choreographer's dancers, but you really are a dancer's choreographer for a certain kind of dancer who loves working at her extremes, who has a certain kind of technical capacity. It just feels so good to be able to move in that way. You know, I think there's a lot of discourse about dance being bad for your body, or it hurts, or this, that, and the other. But if you're trained a certain way and you're looking for that edge on top of your classicism, your movement feels great, and you can discover it for yourself almost better without words at times. You know, it's just about working the phrases and whatnot. And I guess I was wondering, in terms of rehearsals, how does the process emerge in relationship to music? The music for this piece is just so driving and really emotionally charged, yet subtle. And I know, having been in rehearsals and classes with you back in the day, sometimes you switch up the music at the last minute, which is super exciting and terrifying at the same time. And I was wondering, did you play with music in this rehearsal process, or did you have a score or piece in mind before you began?
So I had a certain selection of music that I wanted to use. One of the things that I really wanted to make sure that is, I wanted to be able to use the orchestra. I wanted this to be a live kind of, I wanted them to be in the room, the music to be played in the room, the dancing to be played in the room, and the viewer to be in. I wanted it to be all of us participating at the same time, because it's something that we all can relate to. So that was important. But I did have a playlist, but I ended up changing. I think it was the fourth movement. I ended up flipping some music around because I didn't quite feel I was getting what I needed from the music. And I went looking for, and it ended up being another Philip Glass piece of music where I found what I needed. And then originally I was trying to do it all with one composer, and it just didn't work out quite that way. But you know, there's an organic nature to how the movement unfolds, and I encourage the dancers to use their bodies in that way. So the spine is involved. So it's not just the legs and feet and arms. And then the music plays such a key, is so key to kind of unlocking that idea of how it's going to move in the space. And one of the things that I thought happened very organically, if you want, in the rehearsal process was the music became decided according to, like, I would work on maybe the featured, say there was a feature moment in that where there, not the group, but maybe it was a pas de deux or a solo or something. And that would tell me right away that this is the right piece of music. Because I was trying to get to the heart of the matter right away with my featured performers. And then it said, okay, so now I can, you know, adorn the space with the group and go further with the concept. That was kind of how it worked in this one. Not always, but this one worked like that.
Now, I fear that's incredible. And obviously, like, the luxury of having an orchestra is just amazing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I hope I'm not giving something away, but there was a moment that was just so moving to me. Okay, spoiler alert. Where there's a horizontal line approaching the audience downstage. Everyone's facing the audience, and suddenly the dancers become regular everyday people. They kind of pick their relaxed pose. And, you know, my heart just dropped in that moment. And then they pivot and go upstage, and the soloist is trying to sort of grapple with that whole soloist versus group situation. And so I have a lot of questions based on that observation. One is, I know in the history of a lot of your works, you do tend to have a lone soloist figure who's often a man or non-binary, and kind of positions across from the group or in relationship to a group, whether it's a line or a circle, and trying to sort of feel through maybe their identity or their purpose or their religion. And I noticed the recurrence of that figure in this piece, you know, so prominently. And I guess I want to ask you, in this piece, what is the relationship between the solo figure and the group?
So that solo figure that you're talking about, and you probably saw Esteban Hernandez doing that particular role in the cast that you saw. And he's the empath. He's the empath for the ballet. In many ways, he feels everything for everybody. So the range of emotions, the setbacks, the 3 steps forward, the 2 steps back, the doubt, the inspiration, the courage to say, I can, all of that feeds through him as the piece kind of unfolds, because each section does have a featured performer. As we take that kind of journey, featured performers, I should say. But that central figure really does, he's the soul of the whole work.
Oh, I love that.
To be honest. And, you know, and I know this isn't about Esteban, but Esteban is such a special guy. I just have to say that, talk about a dancer that, you know, you can't teach what he possesses. He just is such, he's empathic. I don't know. He's just very, very, he has a great emotion. He's an incredible dancer, but it's beyond his skill set. There's something about the majesty of him as he stands in the space. He was also a solo figure in my last piece. I love creating on him. I couldn't get enough. So this time I used him again.
Well, you know, it's beautiful that you say that, because your work in reality often operates in the studio through a muse and choreographer relationship, which I've written about in relationship to Desmond, your first muse. And so it's as if you can't have the choreography without the person, you know, without the muse, the soloist. And you know, so it's as if there's no stand-in. it's about this person.
Yeah.
And I wonder, this might be hard to answer, but how can you tell when a dancer in this type of setting is that kind of empathetic dancer? Like, how can you tell through their movement?
I think it's a response to the material. So, I think, Ariel, I walk in the room and I usually have a few phrases prepared. My assistant, who is also a muse of mine, Clifford Williams,
Yes.
is right there delivering the material. And he's an incredible dancer and artist himself. And the dancers are they really respond to the way he does the movement, and they really get in there. And then you see people, especially at this level of San Francisco Ballet, they embody the movement. Yeah. They embody it. If they have to inhabit the movement in order for me to see where it can go. Right. I mean, my ideas are what my ideas are, but I'm really looking for, there's a sense of collaboration. Now, I do not ask him to make up the steps. I do not. I make up the steps. I almost feel like I design their bodies in the space is what I feel.
Yeah, yeah.
But they decide a lot of different things. Sometimes the phrasing. Yeah. They might add a whole nother dimension to the movement. A flourish. And you can see it almost immediately as soon as they know it. Yes. And then I take them off and we go on our own path, together in that way.
Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't know, your method of choreography is very mathematical and complex. You've got to be fully caffeinated. So for anyone who doesn't know, Dwight will have a phrase in mind, dancers will execute it, but then there's insertions, occasionally retrogrades, cut and paste, and this is all happening in real time, Yeah,
you know what? The dancers go home with a headache sometimes because it is a lot of work. Like, not only do they have to get the movement, but then they have to do things like you just said, Ariel, which is, I will insert something because I will make a phrase and I'll be like, oh my God, wait, no, look at how he's doing that right there. Stop. We need something else right here,
Yes. Yes. And, dancers learn differently. Every dancer learns differently. Some pick up like a computer. Others need to rehearse in their bodies for days and weeks. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about how the title of the piece came about and what it means to you and how you see that manifest throughout the piece?
Well, the promised land, meaning, this sort of place that is perfect and feels great and where there's bliss and happiness, peace, harmony, that kind of a feel. It looks at the idea of what that could be, and then it looks at where we are. So it's promised, but it's, one could argue, is that really realistic? And we're certainly not living in a perfect world. Right. But those imperfections themselves are the journey that makes us who we are. And the piece itself, like I said, is just really about, we may strive, because I think we all strive to be better people, find happiness, fulfillment, all of those things within this world that we're in. But we are also flawed beings. We are not perfect. And all of those struggles and all of those recoveries and all of those, pull it togethers that we do is really what the ballet is about. It's about our strength as people. Yeah. I also feel as though in this work itself, there was a sense of community that I felt during this pandemic that, always the hard times brings that out in us, and, unfortunately, sometimes I think we have to have something terrible happen in order for us to remember that we're nothing without each other. Yeah. If you're not, one person on this earth, and you're surrounded by people, and there's strength in community, there's strength in love, and there's strength in togetherness. And that is what happened during these 2 years. We found that out again, not that we didn't know, because we've had other struggles, but I think that is part of what this ballet is also about.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that a little bit more. You know, you're Black, I'm Asian, we're both mixed race. And I think as a mixed race person growing up, especially in the dance world, you feel included and excluded from different scenes. You know, we also
Mhm.
feel that at the level of style at times.
Mhm.
And there's been a lot of healthy discussion lately about race in the ballet world, of course, in the concert dance world at large. You know, I know there were lots of open dialogues and forums and whatnot. And so we're hoping that this is another, you know, moment of change in the dance world. And so I wonder if you could say a little bit about how this idea of the promised land in your piece, how you hope that will sort of circulate through the ballet world at the level of race,
Mhm.
and sort of what your experience racially in different dance worlds, you know, can lend the ballet world.
Well, I think, the ballet world has had a bit of a wake-up call
Yeah.
in the past year or so, a year and a half, 2 years. And I think that I do see movement and change. And it really needed to happen in order for the form itself to be relatable, to continue to be relatable, or not to be this thing over there in the corner that is not accessible. Because, people want to come to the theater and see themselves on stage, and not necessarily just in whether, it's exact race or not, but that does have some validity. And I think that people need to hear the stories. There are other stories. Yes, I don't ever want to not see Swan Lake. Just let me be clear. I need to see Swan Lake. This is my opinion. I need to see Sleeping Beauty, but there are other stories, and you cannot really be, the word is not current, but as relevant as one could be if you are not really telling the whole story.
Right.
And my stories are different because I'm a Black man. I'm mixed race. I have lots of stories to tell. My perspective is different. I walk in the room different than, the person next to me. And so to fully realize that, I'm hoping that the ballet world can continue to open its doors up and think about that creation, dancers themselves, all of the subject matter that goes across. We need a worldview, we need a worldview. Our audiences, our boards of directors, our support systems. I started my company with that. That was Desmond and I started with that at the foundation. Because we loved it so much. We thought that it was incredible to have all of this variety in the room. We learned more. I learned more because I was near someone that was different than me.
Yeah. And I love that about your work and the collective and the collective that you were able to create with Desmond, because you really made it okay for any type of dancer to be in the room. Big, small, queer, straight, ballet, modern. And for me, it was the first time I had ever stepped into a studio feeling accepted and seen, and, and even able to imagine possibilities. And so I do want to talk about pas de deux work and gender and point shoes, because I know that your company, Complexions, really does embrace men on point sometimes, which is great. I know that a lot of men and non-binary folks train on point every day, just as a technical training system, but then others love working on point. And I noticed in the SFB pieces, of course, there's a lot of kind of man, woman, heterosexual pas de deux work, all incredibly, impressive and gorgeous always. But what is your relationship today to pas de deux work? And then how do you see it playing out in the promised land in this piece?
you're right. There's a lot of sort of man-woman traditional partnering. And I think that that kind of just happened that way. And a lot of times, I don't necessarily, it's most of the pas de deux work in this ballet is not about the story of a man and woman. It's basically two bodies. There's sometimes one that is obviously lifted more than the other, which would be the girl, because it's more traditional. But I think that I went there because of some of the partnerships here that I actually really like some of the people. And I knew that I was going to be able to get the story that I wanted by utilizing these specific dancers. And it kind of took shape from there. And there's a couple moments where, you know, two guys dance together or two girls dance together. But overall, you're right. There's a lot of traditional partnering in this one. I don't even think that it was purposeful as much as it was about what they were adding to the mix and the partnerships that I kind of had fallen in love with before when I was here last time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And the partnerships really are so kind of, you can tell the dancers have been dancing together so beautifully. Now, one thing I wasn't able to see in the rehearsal videos were costumes and sets. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that process, how the visuals came about.
So my costume designer is Christine Darch, who's creating them. I literally, before we started talking today, we were already, we had our first rehearsal in the space yesterday with the tech. And so we found out some things by, you know, our first tech, we were like, okay. So this, we want to change this, we want to change that. So she designed the costumes, and the costumes are really, without giving away too much, they're kind of, you have to think that this is almost like a legion of people, a generation of people having this experience in this space. If you can think of before we had this pandemic hit and everything went into, you know, chaos.
Yeah.
We were, you know, we were going about our lives. We were slick, you know, we were moving about, we were living, you know, we were living, we were loving, we were partying, we were, so there's a sense of, in this ballet, this is what it is, but then they're flawed or somewhat not perfect. So they've been, you'll see the sort of sophisticated nature of being able to be free and everything is going well. And then you're going to see that, this is kind of flawed in a way in the costumes. The set itself is really, we don't really have a set. It's done through the lighting. There's I won't even say what it is, but there's a lighting element that really defines where these people are and kind of gives an array of emotions, I hope.
Yeah, lighting can be everything, right? I know when I think of lighting, I always think of Ulysses Dove's episodes, and I know Dove was a huge influence on you.
Absolutely.
And Desmond. I wonder if you can say a little bit about who your early choreographic concert dance influences were, and even not concert dance influences.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, three big ones that come to me right away are Alvin Ailey, George Balanchine, and definitely Ulysses Dove. And later on, a little bit of Forsyth, because I just loved his courage, not necessarily what he did, but the fact that he didn't really care and he kind of decided to like break through the form. So who he is now, a friend of mine, and I love talking to him because he's very inspiring. But Alvin, what Alvin Ailey was able to bring to dance, it's all of, you know, he was a man who led with his heart and soul, you know. George Balanchine, the mastery of the composition and the, you know, there's so many different things. Ulysses Dove, oh my God, just I danced so much of his work, and he had a small vocabulary, but what he did with his vocabulary was really, really remarkable. So many different, those are some of the people that I think are amazing, what they brought to the space.
Fantastic. Well, I know that we're almost at time, and I wonder if there's anything else you would like to share about the piece, because I know the audience is excited to hear more about your process, I'm sure.
Let's see. I don't know. You're really good. You asked all the right questions. But I have to say that I do have to say that I'm thrilled to be back and to be doing another production. And also I feel really grateful that we have a chance to actually put dance in front of an audience again. I've been attending some of the performances here over the season, and the audiences are back and they're ready to roll. People are hungry to see it, and I hope that the Promised Land, I really hope that the Promised Land is something that reaches you. Yes, I hope the visual really stirs your soul or stirs you up a little bit. But more than anything, I really want the audience to have a sensation. I want there to be a feeling. I want them to, they might feel sad on one part. They might feel inspired. They might feel, yes, or satisfied or happy even. But everyone, because it's abstract, I want everyone to walk away with something. I want them to feel something, I guess.
I know they will. And I can't wait to see the piece. Well, it's been amazing having this chance to speak with you. I could talk with you for hours and hours.
I know, me too.
And I'm sure we will again really soon.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone gets to enjoy the Promised Land. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time. I'm like caught in this conversation and I'm hanging on to your every word. So thank you so much, Dwight and Ari, for this rich and wonderful points of view. The conversation was so inspiring. From taking us through your aesthetic art to the exploration in the studio and your style and bringing the vision that you and Desmond had for what dance can be. Dwight, you said disruption, break it out and look at it from a new way. And I loved how that plays in my mind when you say that, and like what dance can be for the audience, for the dancers, for everyone working in that space, and what the disruption of that can be. So I'm so excited for audiences to see the Promised Land. You said that you thought dancers were hungry for this. I think that you'll find that audiences are equally hungry for this, to see the work, to experience and process and unpack through your work, the feelings and emotions and everything that's happening around them. And like you said, what we do to get through the day. So the sensation, audiences will feel something. And I'm so excited to have an opportunity to see this opening night performance. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your experiences and memories with us. I'm so grateful for what both of you bring to the dance world, and Dwight for you taking audiences through this moment of change in the ballet world. So thank you for this rich and wonderful conversation. I do have to wrap it up. So thank you to our online viewers as well for listening to Points of View. I look forward to sharing Helgi's farewell season with you. Please take time to visit our website to learn more about SF Ballet's 2022 repertory season and to learn about the many educational offerings and programs this year. Thank you again to our guests, Ariel Osterweis and Dwight Rhoden. Go see the Promised Land. And on behalf of everyone at San Francisco Ballet, we wish you and your family good health. Thank you for being with us during this time. See you at the ballet. Bye.